Hello, I'd just like to make a little video about racism in sport. First of all, I'd like to say that racism is a personal choice, and most people choose racism. This is why you get places like Chinatown and Brick Lane, the place where all the Indians live, that people go to get curries, and so on. I know that these days we seem to be living in a multicultural society run by leftists, but whether or not the left know it, I think they're actually run by big business. Because as we know, big business wants to globalize. Now, big business runs every country in the world these days because it says, if you don't do what we say, we will go somewhere else. So every government does what big business says these days. That's why even when you have a right-wing government, it seems to be having a left-wing agenda, because the globalists, the big business people, actually want this. So what do they get out of it? Well, with so-called multiculturalism, with globalization, they get cheap labor and resources like oil and so on from other countries, from non-Western countries. Okay, so globalization has also taken place in sport. Okay, rich people get world weary, and they need to stimulate themselves and find some way of having fun. You know, they buy £30,000 bottles of champagne, and they get very jaded, and they get tired of lying on their yachts. So they decide to play about with other people and build millennium domes and Olympic venues and so on. And they decide to globalize sport. As is said, sport is uniquely able to bring people together. What this means is that rich people want to entertain themselves all the time by upping the ante and globalizing sport, you know, to make it more exciting for themselves, I suppose. Or just to win and treat football like a business. Okay, so what we have is people from around the world being brought in to the West. Okay, so what happens as a result for Westerners? Well, we lose our places in sporting competitions. We lose a lot of income. And we lose the feeling that we're represented by our own people on the pitch. We actually end up feeling like we're watching a bunch of strangers rather than people like of our own kind. People we're watching, people we don't feel represented by, people we feel are somehow other and therefore not of so much interest to us when they play their games, kind of thing. So what does this mean for Westerners particularly? This is particularly damaging for Westerners because for us, playing games is a very big part of our lives. Westerners come up with hundreds of ways of competing for fun. Tiddlywinks, basketball, racing, rowing, Sudoku, video games, football, hockey, balloon races, hopscotch, countless games, you know, which come up with all kinds of levels in all kinds of ways to enjoy competing with one another. So it's a natural behaviour for us. Okay, but we're being displaced from these behaviours at all levels of sport by foreigners who come here to take resources, financial resources from us, and then even to displace us in our enjoyments. So, you know, even farm animals and zoo animals get more consideration than we give ourselves these days. So naturally, we feel very upset and angry about that. And that's very reasonable. Peoples of other countries sometimes only come up with a handful of games themselves. Some places come up with no games at all. They just talk when they have spare time. So they don't have the same need for gaming that Westerners have. So they're not actually hurt by not being involved in gaming. They maybe enjoy it, but that's all. They're not hurt by not being involved in it. And even if they were, it wouldn't give them the right to displace us in our own homes, displace us from our enjoyments. So we're actually treating ourselves very unfairly. And what are we going to do? Go and live in Africa and play for the local team in Africa? You know, this is our homeland. Around the world, all the different peoples keep their homeland. None of them surrender them. Afghanistan hasn't surrendered itself, neither did Iraq, and neither have the Libyans, for example. We should not surrender our country. We shouldn't surrender our enjoyments, our representation on the pitch of feeling like our own people, our own kind, people we can relate to and care about more, quite naturally, are competing. We shouldn't give up the loss of income that is, after all, created from our resources, you know, that we create for ourselves. Again, resources, a high level of resources are again natural to white people and therefore something we need. They're not natural to other peoples and they don't need them. They might like them, but they don't need them, and they certainly shouldn't be taking them from us in our own home, leaving us poor in our own home, in our own homeland, okay? So we see there's a very big deal going on there, which is being addressed with zero tolerance. That's actually only applying pressure to the situation, which will only make it boil all higher under the surface, boil at a higher temperature under the surface. Okay, another matter to be addressed is the behaviour of different races on the pitch. I don't follow sport, but I've heard that black people misbehave on the pitch more than white people do. Now, this is naturally going to make a problem as well. It means that when a white person sees a black person, they will feel that there's an extra problem to be watched out for, possibly with regard to that person. Now, you might say that's racist, and you can't blame every individual for what some people of their group do. But it's worse to be a member of the victim group. And you can't blame people for being wary of danger. Every time you cross the road, you have to be wary of danger. Okay, from cars. You don't call people carist. So you shouldn't call them racist when they're being wary of danger. They have to be wary of danger. If you told them not to be wary of danger, they would be unrealistically off guard in what was more likely to be a dangerous situation. That's telling them to place themselves in danger. You can't tell people to place themselves in danger, in an unrealistic level of danger, while other people are not facing the same stresses and are therefore at an advantage. And their opponents, their potential victims, aren't even wary of what have been forced to not even be wary of the extra danger that they're facing. You're making people face extra dangers without being aware of it, and advantaging other peoples who are deliberately presenting danger and know they're going to, and who have therefore a more easy victim. It's ridiculous. It's silly not to address realistic concerns realistically. And this is what's happening. Realistic concerns are not being addressed realistically. And Westerners, as a result, white Westerners, are going to be upset and angry. They're going to be oppressed by leftist and globalist philosophy, which is basically mistreating them. And all this is just going to boil away under the surface until white people simply finally decide that they will address it themselves because it has to be addressed. And then they will become sovereign again, as every other people on earth is. I personally will be very glad and happy when that happens. And as far as I'm concerned, the sooner it happens, the better. Thank you. Bye-bye.